Welcome back to Guided by Faith. I'm your host, Jay Holland. I hope you've had a great week, and I'm looking forward to one last great episode this week before we go into a weekend where I hope you get some rest, some relaxation, and encouragement. This week, we've been actually kind of surveying the major world religions. We've been seeing how they stack up against Christianity in a comparison of belief systems, not like whose God is a better God, but in comparison of belief systems. We did share at the beginning of the week with Christianity that Jesus makes a very exclusive claim. He is the way, the truth, the life. Nobody comes to the Father but through him. And this week we've looked at Islam, Hinduism, and Buddhism, which are the major world religions. I know Judaism is a world religion, but it comes out of Christianity, and most of my audience would know much more about Judaism than the others. I'm going to tackle one more major belief system this week, and I would say it is not a world religion, although it's interesting to me because in many ways it has the character traits of a world religion while being distinctly not religious, and that would be naturalism. And so, do you remember that we have talked in comparison, we've talked about the problem, the solution, the nature of God, the nature of salvation, and the afterlife. And we've looked at the different world religions with that. And I think it's fair to do that with naturalism and then just ask, who has a better explanation for the way things are? And so in naturalism, if they would look at the problem, what's interesting is many people who are atheistic, many people who would consider themselves naturalists would absolutely look at the world and say, yes, we have a problem. But the problem that they would say is ignorance, suffering, and then societal problems. The problem is that we don't know enough, or that people are suffering because they're in the wrong circumstance, and then all of the societal problems that we have. The solution that they have, though, is through human reason, through science, and through progress in our technologies. The nature of God would be there is no God. There's no spiritual universe. Only the physical universe exists. The nature of salvation is not salvation like we would think of it in terms of any other faith. Salvation would be, what is the ultimate good that man could live out on this earth? And that would be improvement through education, through ethics, through social reform, not just for the individual, but for the whole society. And those things are all very good. I would not disagree that we would be better as humans if we had better education, better ethics, and social reform. Their view of the afterlife is that there is no afterlife. Their only consciousness, the only consciousness that we have is that we have while on this earth, and that consciousness ends at death. So how do you then compare that with Christianity? Christianity believes something quite different about all of those things. What I would say, though, is when we go back to the beginning, to me, what is really profound is the whole question of the problem. Now, Christianity would say the problem is evil in the world. And I think what's really interesting is that most people who have a naturalistic bent would say something is very wrong with people, very wrong with their behavior. And they would have no problems describing certain things as evil. But what's interesting to me is that ultimately, that description of something as evil is like you're bringing a spiritual nature to something that you would say is very not spiritual. Because in the naturalistic world, we've all just evolved from lower life forms, and life is 100% survival of the fittest. Life is, can you survive long enough to pass on your genes to enough of your descendants for them to survive, to pass on their genes, for them to survive, to pass on their genes. So if that's the way of the world, then in a lot of sense, might makes right. And if you can do it and it helps you pass on your genes, then it can't be considered evil. Like for instance, if I watched a lion take out other lions, it makes me feel sad as a human, but I don't think that lion's evil. A lion's just doing what a lion does. If I watch a human take out other humans, I feel like that's evil. And I believe that most naturalistic people, when they see humans taking out other humans, they would say it's evil. But there's no basis for the right and wrong except the general agreement of society. And society changes its mind on a regular basis. I also, just in my experience, we live in a spiritual world. There are things beyond the physical that are not explained by the physical. There are certainly physical things that we don't yet have an explanation for. But very much, I feel confident that we live in a spiritual world, that there are realities beyond our physical existence. There's a desire for worship wired inside humanity. And I don't think it's an evolutionary wire. I think it's a God-given wire. The other thing that just is really crazy to me is when you get down to the basics of how we got here, I don't know how you get past DNA. I don't know how you get past design. DNA is so complex. The simplest cell is so incredibly complex. It just speaks that it's fearfully and wonderfully made. Every cell, I'm scratching my cheek right now. I have a bunch of skin cells in the side of my face. If you're watching on YouTube, you see me do weird things with my cheek right here. Every cell in there is more complex than the most complex car assembly factory. Every single cell. You don't get less complicated as you get smaller and smaller. It gets more amazing, more intricately designed. It feels like there's a plan and purpose to every cell in my body. It feels like there's a plan and purpose in my life, and it feels like there's a plan and purpose for humanity. And I think the Christian faith speaks to that very well. And I feel like the naturalistic worldview leaves that quite empty. The plan and purpose, it feels like you're made for something more than just passing on your genes, because you're made for more than just passing on your genes. You are made to have a relationship with the God who made you. You are made to reign and rule over creation as a caretaker, as a steward of God's stuff. You are made to reflect the glory of God and enjoy life with God and the other people he made. Most of us know this in our wiring, even if we rebel against it in our actions. And I think the Christian faith speaks to that very well. We've looked at world religions all week. I've studied a lot of them. I've tried to hold Christianity to the same objective standards. And I have come out with the conclusion that I still firmly believe what I grew up believing, not because my parents believed it, but because I believe it. Because I have held it up, and it is firm and it is solid. And it doesn't mean I have every question answered, but I believe that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. I have confidence in this. And I believe that nobody comes to the Father but through him. And so my prayer for you is that you would come to God through Jesus, that you would realize that he is God, that he is King, that he died for your sins, and that he rose again, and that your faith would be in him and not a set of works that you might do and hope that you're enough. I hope this makes sense to you. I hope this week's been helpful to you. I pray that you have an awesome weekend. I pray that you have joy in your faith and that your life reflects the goodness of God to those around you. Have a great weekend. I look to talking to you again next week. God bless you.